Now that we have the reference images in place, let's begin thinking about how we want to begin blocking out the shape of this machine gun. Looking at it, I see this kind of base form right in here, this piece right here that goes back to here. It looks like a rectangular piece that other pieces are built up onto or coming out of. So I think what I'd like to do is just work on this piece first, get it in place, use these two images to try and get an idea of how thick it is, and then we can begin building up the other pieces on top of that. For an object like this, I really like to think of it as it's being manufactured. I like to think of it being assembled piece by piece, because this is not all one object. This isn't a single molded object. It's many different pieces put together, bolted onto each other, welded onto each other to make the overall object. So what I'm going to be doing is looking for ways to break it down piece by piece so I can use Blender's primitive objects to build the individual pieces. So let's begin with the cube. I'll just come over here to the Create tab and click Cube. I'm also going to press the Z key so I can go into wireframe mode, and I'll just scale it down here and move it up into place, something like this. I'll hit S and Z to scale in the Z axis. And I just want to get it right about like this. And now I'll scale in the Y, S and Y, and scale it out so it kind of fits that piece right there. Now it looks like it's a little bit taller. I'll tab into object mode and then press Control Tab and the 3 key and select that face on the top and just bring it up just a little bit. I can also grab this one here and bring that down just to make sure it encompasses that whole piece. I'll also switch to vertex mode with Control Tab and the 1 key, and then I'll hit the B key and border select that point there, and border selecting in wireframe will also select any points behind it. So I'll hit the 3 key to go back to the right camera here, and I'm just going to move this back, and I'm also going to grab this and move this. It's kind of like this. So I think that now encompasses that whole piece. And of course there's always tweaking and adjusting that can be done here, but generally speaking I think that's pretty good. Let's take a look at it in solid mode and tumble around here, and let's take a look at it and see how wide this should be. I'll hit the 5 key to take a look at it in perspective view. And now this is sometimes kind of the difficult part if we don't have an exact top view. How wide should this be? And it may be kind of a guessing game for a while here until we get other pieces put onto it. But for right now, I feel like it's going to maybe be about like that. And then we've got this piece that kind of extrudes off of it. So let's try this for now. I'll go back to the side view, and from here let's insert a few edge loops to extrude this piece out right here. There's a little edge that comes out right here. So I'll go into edit mode, press Control R, and click and drag an edge right up to about here. And now it looks as if this edge or this extrusion isn't as far out back here as it is up here. So I may need a couple of edges right in here to give me that transition. So I'm going to put an edge right about here. I'll go into vertex mode and hit the B key and click and drag this back a little bit just so it's more vertical, and I'll do the same down here. Now that we have those marked out, I'll just grab these faces here as well as these on the other side. And now let's extrude out just a bit. You can see that extrusion here and on back here. So I'll press E, and then I'll click, and then I'll press S and X and scale out just a little bit, like this. Now I think I'll need one more edge loop, maybe right in here to help hold this part while I take these faces here and extrude them out just a hair. So S and X, and then scale these out just a bit like that. So now we're getting this piece right here. This piece could probably move up just a bit. I can press Alt and click an edge between two of the faces, and that selects that whole face loop, and now I'll just drag that up just a little bit, right into here, perhaps. What we can do now is see if we can get a little bit more rounded edges here. You can see we've got kind of rounded edges here, as well as, if we go back to the side view, rounded edges on the extrusions themselves. So to do that, let's work on adding a subdivision surface modifier. Now, we'll be doing this quite a bit as we go through the project, but let's test it here on this object. Now I'm going to go to the Modifiers panel and click Add Modifier, and I'll choose Subdivision Surface. Now, what this will do is attempt to smooth out all of the curves at every edge. Now, it's kind of blocky and ugly currently, but let's turn the view up to 2, and then let's come over here to the Tools panel, and let's click Smooth Shading. And that smooths it out quite a bit. So you can see what it's beginning to give us here. Now, I'll go ahead and tab into Edit Mode, and you can still see the external cage of the original polygons outside of the smoothed object. What let's do here is now begin to insert edge loops to see if we can come up with something that looks like this curve here on the front of this piece. So I'll press Ctrl R and click, and I'll drag until we get something that's kind of like that curve. You can see how the mesh straightens and curves, how the edges sharpen and collapse as we move that edge. So I'm just going to move that edge right up to here and click. And back here as well, we're going to need one back here. I'll press Ctrl R and click, and I'll move this right back to here like this. Now let's take a look at that. So that's beginning to give us that edge right here. However, it's still kind of what I call gloppy. It's kind of like a blob. I want these edges to be a little sharper while still having some of that curve. So I'm going to go ahead and come in and insert a few more edge loops, maybe one here, and bring this up like that. And maybe one along here and bring that down like that. There we go. So that's beginning to give us a little bit harder edge there, although I think that may be a little bit too much, so I'll bring it back, and I'll press Alt and click and bring this one back a little bit as well. There we go. So now this is that beginning piece that we're going to build off of. Now that we've smoothed it though, we can see that this part here could be pulled out a little bit more. So I'll select these two pieces right here and here, and let's pull these out a little bit more and see what happens. I'll press S and X and bring them out just a bit. Kind of like that. There we go. I think I need an edge up here on the top as well, so I'll press Ctrl R and add an edge right up here. And perhaps one down on the bottom as well. Right here. Okay. So there we have that beginning part. Let me go back to the side view. And this is that main piece that everything else is kind of bolted or welded onto. Now keep in mind we are going to retopologize this entire thing. So I'm currently working with a lot of polygons, but that's okay. We can use as many as we want here and now, because all this is doing is just getting us that high resolution detail that we're then going to create a texture map to apply to the low polygon version. So in the next video, let's begin adding a few more of the pieces onto the base.